Today is March the 16th, 2004. I'm Barbara McCroskey. I'm interviewing Harland Abbott in the library of the Porterville Nazarene Church in Porterville, California. Harland, would you tell us your full name and your birth date?
Harland Stanton Abbott, and that's September the 16th, 1923.
Pasadena, California.
Yeah, Pasadena, California. Can't forget that.
Okay. Did you grow up in Pasadena, Harland?
Yes, my younger years, up till I was 4 years old. And then the folks moved down to Escondido, and he bought 160 acres and was running a nursery. Well, the Depression came on, and they managed to hold on to their place, but we went back to Pasadena, and we spent a lot of years back and forth, and sometimes we'd be down there, but basically we ended up as being hillbillies. We didn't like the city life.
Did you go to school both places?
Right, right. We went to Pasadena long enough in the schools to be integrated in the sense that we don't believe in segregation and all of that stuff that went on.
Mm-hmm. Did you go to junior high school at all in Pasadena?
No, didn't. I went to junior high over in West Hollywood.
Oh.
And my dad went over there, got into landscaping for the movie industry at that time. They were in their heyday. And
what junior high did you go to?
West Hollywood.
West Hollywood. Okay. I asked because my husband went through Hollywood schools.
I went to Fairfax High School.
Oh, Fairfax.
For a year and a half.
Well, that was a good enemy of Hollywood High.
Yeah.
Okay. Where were you on December 7th, 1941? Everybody knows.
Right, I sure know that. I was on a 24,000 acre cattle ranch up in the northern part of San Diego County. The one and only Spanish land grant that has not been subdivided and broken up. Still in its original state. And I went to work there when I was about 18 years old as a feeder, feeding cattle. They bring the cows into the pens from off the mountains and the range, and my job was to grind the grain and the hay and take it out and feed them in the corral when they were there.
Make sure it was there for them.
Right. Okay, I was there on a Sunday, and I went home at noon. I'd finished my work, and I got home and I was listening to it on the radio, on my car radio.
Oh, you had a car.
And oh yeah, that was my first car. Got a picture of it there. The 1937 Ford, two-door, 85 horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
And but the folks had gone to church. They came home and I told them about it. My dad was this perpetual optimist, and he said, "Well, we'll make short work of them." And but it didn't turn out that way quite. So it was.
Okay.
But from then on, our family was turned upside down, so to speak. It all went every way, which way, and so I was deferred for a year on the agricultural deferment. And in 43, my friends and neighbors gave me a 1A, and but they didn't call me. I just kept working away, and I wanted to go in because my friends and relatives, and mom and dad, were all gone. So I thought I might as well get in. But I didn't know which thing to take, and I had cousins in the Navy and Coast Guard. And I said, well, in this thing, I'll just leave it up to the Lord to just take me when He's ready to take me, and I'll just take you as whatever He gives me.
Wait till they called you.
Right. I wouldn't have any way of blaming myself on what happened.
Yeah. Well, everybody was going in, so
Right.
it was the thing to do.
Right. So,
I haven't had an opportunity to talk to anyone who was deferred for agriculture. I know there are some here in Porterville. Did they just let you know that? Did they let you know you were deferred?
No, you applied for it.
You applied for it.
You had to, state your
What you were doing.
and things like that. And
of course, that was pretty important because we needed the.
and probably one of the reasons why they changed my deferment, I moved to right next to my folks' place was a 600-acre, well, it was a hog farm, and a beautiful grape winery place. It was owned by Mr. Strom. He manufactured steel ball bearings in the wartime, and I went on as a feeder for the hogs, and I guess the draft board saw that and they said, well, he's not too serious about staying where he was, so they caught up with me.
So actually, you waited until you were drafted then.
Right, that was an interesting ranch when I first went there. It was when we went to the elementary school there, we went and the kids, but it was owned by a Commodore Causey, and he was in the Navy, and his wife was the daughter of Vice President Fairbanks with Teddy Roosevelt when he was in.
Oh my goodness!
So it had some prestige there. It was a nice place, and it had the highest what do you call it? In taxes for improvements on the property. It had the highest improved rating in the county at that time.
Oh my!
So it was quite a nice place.
Really a going thing.
Right.
Okay, so you were drafted.
Right.
And where did you report?
Down to San Diego. We were draft board number 162, I believe it was. And from there, they sent us up by Greyhound bus up to Fort MacArthur in San Pedro Harbor. We got all of our clothing and outfits and shots and all that. The two main things I remembered there was the foghorn that blew all night long.
Made it kind of hard to sleep.
And the first reveille, right. And I can still remember the words the man said. I don't want to repeat them.
Mm-hmm.
And some things, what your mind will pick up and retain.
Right. And you jumped up and did it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay. You weren't at Fort MacArthur very long.
No, just about a week, I think. Time we got all our shots, and well, it was a week, I think. I got it.
So you had to get your shots and your clothing issued. And
right. And actually went to the tailor and let them shorten and all that stuff. they did us a good job.
And then you went to Camp Roberts.
Went to Camp Roberts.
Okay,
right.
Did they bus you there? Or?
They bused us up to Camp Roberts, and I got there, and the first went there, they put us in a cannon company. Man, we were beside ourselves with, we thought good favor had really struck us. but as it so happened in the service for some reason, don't know why, only they know, you're transferred to another outfit. They took us all over to the heavy weapons company, and we trained in a heavy weapons company, which is a water-cooled heavy machine gun, 30 caliber, along with 81 millimeter mortars. And we spent our 17 weeks training with those things.
Okay, while you're talking about Camp Roberts, why don't you pick up the books and the picture there, and we'll see if we can get those on the camera, because that's part of your Camp Roberts history, and we haven't had but one other person show us those.
Got two of them here.
Yeah, now that one that's with the soldier, and I am a doughboy, that's the old original one, isn't it? They've given it out for years, I think.
It might be. Probably the standard fare. This is Camp Roberts.
Camp Roberts, that's in California.
Right.
Now, what are these? There you have a picture, I think, of the group, too.
Yeah.
At Camp Roberts.
This was the group that we trained with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm right up front there, right at the center of the picture.
The dreaded center, huh?
And
okay.
They lined you up by alphabet.
Alphabet.
And by a height. And except we got one fella here you could really pick up. He was a giant. He had the And he stands head and
Head and
shoulders.
shoulders above everybody
Right.
else. Huh?
But there's a real cross-section of individuals.
Well, now,
Yeah.
was this really of course you've lived a couple of places, but this was your first mixing with that kind of everybody and lots of men? And
Well, right. In any great amount of people, you know. I just came off one of the farm boys, you might say.
Mhm.
I was an introvert. I didn't, and I, not ashamed to say it, I was a Christian. It's not something I went around told anybody, but I believed in living the life what was expected of us.
Good.
So that caused a little dissension, and you live with that.
But I'm sure there were some other Christians in the group.
Well,
Maybe they didn't announce it.
not
Huh?
very, yeah, right. There was one of the cooks was next door, but got acquainted with him. But few and far between.
Okay, tell me about the 17 weeks. Now, what kind of training? Guns?
Okay, right. Of course, I could go right through the picture of the book, but I'll start out in your basic training. To me, it went real fast. I felt it went too fast because I never felt like I completely grabbed the substance, like de-arming a mind or something like that, you know.
Uh-huh.
I want to know more about that. But it was just bang, bang, bang like that, one subject after another. Rifles, bayonets, combat training in little villages, and hiking, firing ranges, mortar ranges, machine gun range. I did come in third in our platoon on machine gun.
Oh, my goodness.
Not that that was anything tremendous, but in fact it actually works against you.
So?
That is if you don't want to be a machine gunner.
Yeah, if you don't want to be one. Huh?
Yeah, but anyhow, just daily calisthenics, of course, and
Marching.
marching, and
Did you do it?
Camp Roberts, as the person not aware of, is in the foothills of the western side of California,
Mm-hmm.
in the rolling hills, quite like the hills around here, up against the mountains. Only it was up against the coastal range.
Right.
And it got hot, but not quite as hot as in the San Joaquin
In the
Valley.
valley.
And but we
What did you think of the drill instructors?
well,
Were they good? Were they
no,
strict?
my biggest complaint was I was brought up to obey, to do as I was told, to be, but we weren't a yes sir or no sir.
Mhm.
My folks didn't teach us like robots, but looking at it back, I understand why a lot of that's necessary, but to me they seem like they treated us like kids. You know, one thing I rebel against right off the bat, they put a cigarette butt can on my hip and said, "You carry that," and everybody puts their cigarette butts in the can.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I said, "Well, I don't smoke. Let the next guy carry it." So I didn't learn to roll with the blows quite.
You weren't real happy with some of those.
No, some of those things. But anyhow, we kind of smoothed out on some of that.
Well, when you were there 17 weeks, that was a pretty long basic.
Right, did it. Yeah, some of them only went 13 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in one sense, we were happy to get over it, but then again, you knew what was down the road ahead of you.
Okay, now you graduated from Camp Roberts in September of '44.
Right.
So, where were you sent from Roberts? Did you get
Okay.
leave time?
Okay, our orders were to go to the 71st Division at in Georgia, was Columbus, Georgia, Camp Benning, Fort Benning.
Fort Benning. Oh,
Right.
okay.
And at that time, it was a parachute school
Mm-hmm.
and an infantry. The division we joined was what they call a cadre division for that was where they trained the 90-day wonder military lieutenants,
Mm-hmm.
and they used that division as to to do their work for them. And when they wanted problems and things like that, they would be in bleachers up here watching the procedure. He was doing this and that. So, but they got their orders about the time we got there to go overseas too. So the one thing I remember about that, it was the worst food we ever had in the service. I would rather have sea rations than that.
Oh, really?
But yeah, Brussels sprouts and spare ribs, you know. And so anyhow, we stayed there long enough to go on another forest hike, about 24 miles, full field pack. And oh, I didn't mention that in Camp Roberts. Somebody had a statistic, what do you say? And a sense of humor. And at the end of our 24-mile hike, of course, we were dead tired, and we landed right in an area that there were thousands of tarantulas. And the guys would take their water can, pour it down the holes. They'd come up out of the hole. Only one person I know was stung by one, but it was kind of sadistic. That's what I'm trying to say. Sense of humor.
But you had to do a full field pack down at Fort Benning too.
Right, as soon as I got down there. I guess that was just to give us something to do.
Keep you busy.
Keep us out of the way, you know. They were packing up, getting ready to go overseas. And so then we got orders to go to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, to the 65th Division. And that was the 260th Company H, 260th Regiment. And they were in the process of getting ready to go overseas too. Why they took us from one
to another.
They were doing the same thing.
The wisdom of the Army.
But so we went to, now from most of the fellows that we were with, they went to the South Pacific Replacement Depot. A few of us were scattered around the nation, here and there in different divisions. And so then I ended up there in the 65th. And about the day after Christmas, I had a heartbreaker while I was there. Because I was, in the sense, I was gung-ho, and I did everything that was supposed to be done. And I didn't want to get caught in we're having what they call a combat infantry badge parade and whatnot. And so I got up early to beat the crowd and shave and all that stuff. And we had to turn out for an inspection. Well, we're coming down the line, whoever it was, officer of division rank, wasn't the captain, but he looked at me and said, "Out." I needed a shave. Well, I had a dark beard, and I'd gotten up way before daylight.
You shaved too early.
Yeah, and I wanted to beat the crowd, and that beat me out of $5. You got a $5 increase in pay, plus that nice, beautiful blue badge. So, that hurt my feelings bad.
Just because you got up early and shaved.
Yeah, but anyhow.
Okay, from Camp Shelby, where did you go?
We get ready to go to overseas. We landed at Camp Shanks, New York, Orangeburg. They were right on the border of New Jersey, and the main thing that surprised me when we got there, they sent us first class on Pullman troop trains. We had our own beds and everything like that. I don't know how many days it took us, 2 or 3 days to get there. But it got colder and colder, and the countryside looked worse and worse as we got there because of the north that way. They have red brick buildings all covered
You were getting to winter.
with soot and snow on the ground and things like that. But we got to Camp Shanks, and all the work was done by Italian PWs. They did all the slave work. And so we were there over New Year's, but they wouldn't let us go on past the New Year's, afraid we wouldn't get back. So,
afraid you'd go to New York City and never come back.
Right. And one of them fellas did. Poor fella. I don't tell any names on that story.
Yeah.
But he went AWOL when he got there. His folks lived there. And so he was AWOL time we left.
Mm.
And but lo and behold, they caught up with him, and they didn't let that slow him down. They sent him back to the outfit. He caught up with us. But first fella killed in our outfit.
Was that the one that went AWOL?
Excuse me.
That's all right.
But anyhow, we were setting up and we relieved the 26th. I'm getting ahead of myself. But the 26th Division, and they weren't quite careful enough when they were setting up there in this city, the town, in a window, and a sniper got him. But from Camp Yanks, I got 2 passes, and one of them I took in the sights of New York, the high buildings and all that. And then next time I went into, we had a Christian businessman serviceman center, run by the businessmen there in town, and it was run. The director was a fellow that I knew from back in our country. He was a navigator.
Oh yeah.
Person, Dick Hightower.
One of the
right.
Dawson Trotman boys.
Right. Yeah. He and Dawson Trotman and one other fellow, Dick Hightower, came to our church before the war, and they really fired us up, and we joined what they call the Dunamis Club. Maybe never heard of that, but it was for high school kids. And but we got started in memorization of the scripture and things like that.
Yeah, it's really good.
And,
It's really good foundation.
Right. So there was we had some kinship there. So that was my last time there. After
so you did get to go to their.
Yeah, I spent the day, and this is where that fellow drew a picture.
Drew the picture of you.
Right. And but then from there, we went back to the base, and then we got ready to ship out, and I got down in here. The 10th of December, or January, was the longest day of my life, you might say. But what had happened?
This is January 45.
January the 10th, 45. Longest day of our lives. Well, what happened is, because you're boarding the plane, or the ships, they get you up before daylight, line you up out there. Of course, it was cold, snow, and then you have to march down to catch a commuter train of some sort, get into the harbor, and then you have to line up. There's a whole division of you getting on one boat. So it was just a hurry up and wait deal. And of course we didn't get loaded up there till we didn't leave the harbor till dark sometime. And
oh, that was a long day.
Yeah. And but we were packed in there like sardines, and it was quite a trip.
What kind of a ship? Do you remember?
Yeah, they said it was a sister ship to St. Mary, Elizabeth. I think it was. It was they put the whole division on
It was
the ship.
an old liner, in other words.
Oh yeah, it was a regular, and it was stacked up 4 high, and that right in January. January was a very December and January was a bad month in those years because when there lots of snow, a lot of and someone said we hit a hurricane on the way going over.
Oh my goodness.
But things I couldn't believe, how can those sailors live on those little boats, and they would go clear out of sight as we were looking over, and the freighters, well, they bobbed up and down like corks, and finally we left them all behind, and we were out there on our own, and
didn't have any escorts?
no, very little escort. And then remember the chaplain. I got acquainted with the chaplain when we got to Camp Shelby there. I had a good fella in our outfit, and he became this chaplain's assistant. But we would meet up there on deck in a sheltered area for Bible study and had a good time of fellowship and looking over the rails and seeing the ocean, how it makes this like fluorescent lighting. And but anyhow, it
But
was
you were sleeping, you say, like four
Right.
deep?
4 deep and high, the whole ship. And every once in a while, somebody gets sick, and over the side they would go. If you go to the restroom, it was just a wash with vomit, back and forth. So it had its challenges. Of course, you had to watch. They had curtains over the doors, so when you went out, you wouldn't reveal
light
any
outside.
lights or anything.
How long did it take to get
10 days.
10 days. That's really not very long.
No,
But I'm sure it seemed like forever.
it's shorter than the last trip coming home on the Liberty trip. That took 21 days,
Oh.
and that was quite a ride too.
But then you're going home. It's different than when you're going.
Right, but the weather wasn't bad.
Where did you land going?
Okay, we landed in the harbor, and that was all bombed out for the boats and things in the harbor, all bombed. And we landed there, and it was right out in the snow, cold, snowy. They put us on the semi-trucks. They were half high, and they were steel. And we all loaded in there and packed in there like sardines. Took us out to the countryside and the villages, and in the snow, it was actually snowing. And they're coming off a hot troop ship, and
All of a sudden you were in snow.
we were right out there, and all of our equipment had gone to England.
Oh.
Because of the submarine activity before. They hit one of the troop ships, and we didn't hear about it, which one it was, till just a couple of years ago. My wife and I were listening to military blunders. I don't know if you ever heard that or not. It's really interesting. But this troop ship was run by not Norwegian, but Netherlands, one of those Netherlands companies, and it was over New Year's Day, and they were bombed, and they all abandoned ship, all of the crew, and left them alone on there to fend for themselves, instructions, and then there was such confusion back at port in England that they got word, kind of like when the sinking of the Titanic, they were kind of rebel making and don't mess with us, and so they lost a lot of time, and before they got off that ship, they lost a lot of men, but that was something I picked up, and
And that was how your equipment got to England.
No, but our other equipment had gone ahead, and on other ships. Yeah, I don't know if anything was on that ship, and I don't think so, because that was carrying a big troop ship. But if you're interested in finding out about it, just write to the military blunders. Got another one here too. Didn't know about till afterwards. But anyhow, we went to Camp Lucky Strike, and during the engineers were setting up this big, huge tent camp. Well, they were called away during the Battle of the Bulge, and they were just standing out there in the field, covered with snow, wind whipping the things around, and we were out there with just our normal clothes, and we really were told that we couldn't allow any to get frostbitten or anything like that. But so what happened is some of the fellows are very ingenious. You don't tell a GI very long he can't do this or that. So they went around the countryside rounding up bales of hay and straw, and first thing we had to do, we had to dig a foxhole right underneath our cot, and then we had to put our cot over there. And then we we wrapped ourselves up with our tent, our pup tent, canvas, around this hay and whatnot to give us some insulation, because you didn't.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And we survived.
Especially if the wind's blowing that cold snow.
I'll tell you, and all of our time, we weren't working with that, is going through chow line for the division mess to begin with. And we'd stand out there in the snow fields. By the time we get there, we'd get a weenie and a boiled potato and a cup of coffee, metal mess gears, and they would freeze right to your plate.
Oh my goodness.
And so we did that a few days. Finally, they get to increasing the service of the mess hall, and so we had a fun time there. And
well, frozen food, you didn't really.
Right. And finally, our gear started catching up with us about a month. And around the 1st of March, we head for the front. And I was sick for some reason. That was the first time, only time I was sick. I don't know what had happened. Mom maybe not eating good enough, but hiking off to get on that troop train, what they call 40 and 8s, and they loaded us on there, and they use these trains all the time. They just throw more straw in them, and they're hauling prisoners and things like that, and it stank so bad in there, it gagged you.
Yeah, enough to make you sick.
I was, fortunately, the particular car I got in, it was like a caboose, and there was kind of had a tower that went up, stairways up, and a couple of us sat up there, and we were off of the straw, but that was a circus, and we were on that for several days, and then we got to the front. We did, one day we hiked out to when we were camped, Lucky Strike, to look at the fortresses along the coast that the fellows had to fight through, and went into the things, and actually I picked up a wooden bullet. During combat time, they'd use wooden bullets, so when they're shooting in these trenches and things, they wouldn't be like a steel bullet that would ricochet around and whatnot. But anyhow, that was the only real excitement we had there, except the fellows would make runs and pick up loaves of bread, French bread, which was a great delight. But you don't want to tell any of the officers this, but anyhow, we were glad to get out of there. But
okay, now when they sent you to the front, where did you go?
Okay, we went up into the Star Basin area. Now, the 94th had been there, no, 95th. They'd been there for a couple of months, and then we relieved the 26th, and right, 26th, yeah, and we were up near Trier, back in France, and then the General Patton commissioned the division, and we went in and relieved the 26th Division. They were set up all around in the Saar Basin, different towns. We went to Saarlottern, and scary thing, we relieved the fellows at night, and no one said anything. No, we just hardly, no one, they weren't happy to leave either. We were replacing them. They were taking up another position on the line, and but we went into an old military, German military cavalry camp, and our vehicles were set up in some of the buildings there, and well, that's one of the scariest things to do, full guard on the front line in the cold wind. The wind was blowing the the tin roof, and you weren't allowed to wear a coat.
Oh.
They wouldn't allow you because the Germans had learned to be able to invade the line by wearing troops coats.
Overcoats.
And so it gave them some camouflage. So they said no more of that. So they didn't allow you to wear overcoats. So you hid behind the bushes and things like that. And but the thing that was amazing to me is that the front battlefield was lit up with searchlights, hitting the clouds and the fog and things, and it reflected back, and it gave an eerie lighting, but it gave you enough to kind of give you some protection, seeing what was going on out there.
My goodness.
So and one of the goofy things was that one of the fellows in our line of jeeps, he was playing around with a hand grenade, and he let that off. Just fortunate, no one was hurt. But things like that happened more often than you'd like to think. And but then it came time to the front to move forward, and so my job, of course, was taking ammunition to the machine gunners up in they were in the outskirts of Sarlaughter. Each squad had a jeep and an ammo bearer, and carried it up there. The second fellow that got it in our outfit was a jeep driver. We had to go down what we call a bowling alley. Now the Germans were up on higher ground, and they had access to zero in on you, and that's why they called it the bowling alley. And fellows were trying to dodge craters and things like that, but he got caught in one of those, and he went off the road and hit a tree.
Well, that was kind of a dangerous job, bringing up ammo.
Yeah, of course. When I signed up for the job, I didn't realize that there was a danger involved.
You didn't know it was going to be that dangerous.
Any more than a machine gun, but anyhow, we spent a couple of days doing that, and then it was on something like the 17th or 18th of March. March 17th, the spring offensive starts in our area. The northern part had already started, but that particular area was one of the most fortified areas along the line, the Siegfried Maginot Line. And I have a book here in a pictorial deal that shows you how severe the armament was. But I don't know if I'll be able to play. I don't know if this thing shows anything, but we had these bunkers.
Pick much of that up or not?
May not.
Yeah, we get a little bit of
pick
it.
it up. But that's what we had to break through to begin with.
Oh.
And so then we were held up for a couple of days, and an interesting thing happened. The platoon sergeant and I were patrolling I don't know just what we were the territory that we were fighting in, and we came to an infantry outfit that had got into trouble. The Germans had a trick of firing tracer bullets up so high down across a piece of road or something that they used their tracer bullets. Then right underneath of it, they had their regular bullets going across that didn't have tracer bullets. So you didn't know that was there. So you tried to go under that.
Duck under, and you were in the line of.
It wasn't too healthy on you. So they flagged us down, and they put the platoon sergeant. He took over the car and the jeep, but I carried the fella back. We found an aid station, and took him to it, and that night, that aid station was bombed out. So which made kind of a sad ending there, but it was finally we got going. They started picking up some steam, and we started going down the road. And, this was just a first thing that was first time we came to pretty well bombed out. Pick up some of these. Oh, Neunkirchen. That was a pretty good sized town. It was beaten up bad, and it was on fire when we got there. We spent the first night in that building, or buildings. They had quite a city there, and but that's where we first came in contact to having one of the things we like to do, and had an opportunity to run around the buildings and pick up these down comforters, and if we were sleeping there, and we'd pick up as many as we could of those and make a bed out of them, and that was our biggest fun time then.
Yeah, they're big on down comforters in Germany.
Right. Everybody had them. Then but we crisscrossed the countryside. We didn't always go in a straight row. We just going through little villages and farms and things like that. And that's where several things along the way. Most of the fellows in general are good fellows, but there's always some that didn't conform to normal standards. But this one fellow, he wasn't my platoon sergeant, but he went AWOL back at the Harb, and he was just honky-tonking around, but they finally sent him back. But we make this round to this, they have what they call boweries. They have walls, high walls around these farmyards, and the whole family lives in the different parts of the houses. But we went in there to see if there was anything in there to see, and but he spotted a girl, and one of the owner's daughters, and proceeded to rape her, and that was not a nice thing. And the parents are standing behind them. So there, incidents like that would happen, but by and large, most of the fellows were fun-loving, just young kids. But
yeah, most of them were probably younger than you were.
Most of them were younger than I was. I was about 20 years old, and they were 18.
17, 18-year-olds.
Right. And but we proceed on. We make a pell-mell dash. Of course, we're crossing rivers, and at the Rhine River, I can't remember all the names of the towns now, but we got on the military's longest pontoon bridge.
Oh, across the Rhine?
Across the Rhine, that they'd ever had a record of. And but we would cross some of the rivers on pontoon, either a barge or they'd set these things up if the 88s didn't bomb them out as they went along. But we were heading. At one time, we were considered the spearhead division, head of all of the divisions, the closest one to Berlin, and we come to a town. Oh, there's things that happen along the way. I don't know how much time we get, but
we've got a little bit, I think.
I didn't sleep well, of course, under those conditions.
No,
and
it's not.
and I was really. And one night we came to this town. We were sleeping in the houses, and I was just out of it. And in the middle of the night, they come, get up, get up. There's tanks are coming this way. This was up in northern central Germany, up in the Mulhausen area. And boy, I couldn't rally around and come out of it. I still remember that today. How difficult it was to get my senses back and get going. But anyhow, we proceed on, and we get in this Mulhausen area, and this was quite a Struth, they call it. And we came to this town. It was a big town, and the Germans tanks were going up a hill ahead of us, and then they called for Air Force and things to come in, and they just really knocked the stuffings out of most of them. But right in that area, now this isn't in the military records, but we met the Russians there. What had happened? What happened? What I think had happened, and when they turned, we went too far. We had gotten into.
You'd gotten further than you were supposed to be.
We'd gone too far. We got into their territory. They were coming this way, and they had these things pretty well mapped out and beforehand who was going to take what, and so we didn't ever think we were going to Berlin. So, but that's the way we're heading. And then they stopped us, and we turned us around. They sent us back, and but we were scared of those Russians. We stopped with a machine gun right in our window where we were camped, because they were a bunch of what you might say Cossacks from the far north, and they were rough looking, and they loved to drink, and they had just gotten paid, never had been paid, and they were feeling good, and so that had us scared. We were glad to retreat out of their way, but we take several days off in a town called Berka.
What's the name of the town?
Berka.
Berka?
B-E-R-K-A. And we regrouped there and organized, and then start heading back down south and going east, and on pell-mell. And one thing that I remember, this just happened to think of it here 2 nights ago, Sunday night. I got to think about Easter Sunday. I said, where was I on Easter Sunday during this time? And then I remembered it. It was in a little town, and we had chapel. And we parked right alongside the road, and the chaplain had a service there. We stopped, and the night before, one of the fellows, machine gun driver and a machine gun operator, we had our machine gun right alongside of us. So they got to feeling good, getting a hold of too much, and they went through that town that night, just strafing the town with a machine gun bullets. That's one thing that I remembered out of that little experience. But that Sunday we had chapel service, and but then we went on and started going south.
You said you were going south and east.
Right, heading towards
Munich?
Austrian, and going through Munich. But we going. This is interesting. We went around a town called Bamberg, and our son went to Bamberg, and he was stationed there. And we went there a number of times after when we were there for 2 years working with this overseas Christian servicemen centers. But our son was working for Brother Andrew on the running Bibles across the border into Poland. But he was stationed there. We went there to see him in '78. And what I was getting at, that's the only picture that I wrote on, just scribbled a note on it, Bamberg. I never didn't have time to put notations on, but for some reason I did. But then that same town became an important part of our life in the next number of years.
Yes.
And we were there for 2 years in the area. But working with the military, that's what we did. We sent movies. We set up a library and had books and movies for the different camps and chaplains and things like that. We would set up our books in the chapels.
And this was after you were home and...
Right. We went back for 2 years on just for...
Okay. Let's finish your time.
Then we, I guess, kept on going east. We went through Regensburg. We took that without a shot. along the way we found resistance as we traveled. But sometimes it was tough working out some of the pockets of resistance. But by and large, they were pretty subdued by then. One sad thing, and I think it's what we think about, I mean, you hate to mention it, but here was another sad situation where one of the fellows were told to take these two GIs back to where they had a rallying area for prisoners. And we had given him cigarettes and chocolate and things like that. Treated him nice, and he went back. But rather than taking him all the way back to the compound, he decided he would end his trip, and he shot him in the back and left him there. That was one of the sad incidents that take place. And once in a while, those things happen.
Yeah, there are sad incidents
in wartime, and it's just fortunate they don't happen more often. And but we end up in Linz, Austria.
That's
And
Austria.
it was quite a big town, and but it was a large city, and we went to about 20 miles out of Linz. We went to another prison camp called Mulhausen, and that's where they had another concentration camp. Stayed there for a few days. Then the Army of Occupation takes over. The war is over, and then a different type of situation develops, where we're pulling guard, and we're going from one area to one prison, one little village, setting up guard stations, and just on the move, never in any one place very long, setting up roadblocks. And the people were doing the same thing. They were carrying everything they could on carts, wheelbarrows, you name it, prisoners of war, displaced people.
Yeah, a lot of displaced people.
It was chaos. And we were fortunate to be in the southern Germany, in the Austrian Bavaria area, I think, back at it. And we went into this little town. I was telling you a little bit about Herzigdorf. We were quartered in the beer hall, and the other part of the building was downstairs where the schoolhouse, and one place where the native Germans people took us in for fed us a meal across the street. And but then we moved on, and from one place to another, we finally end up in one place was in we spent quite a bit of time in Stalag 7A, Moosburg, Germany, and that's where just about all the American prisoners went to during the wartime, and especially the Air Force. And it was they did get treated better than the average prisoners, and but we spent maybe 2 months there. And
now this is all, the war's over, and you're...
It's over. It's occupation time.
Occupation.
And we were setting up camps, and I mean, running little towns. You set up, you're part of the constabulary in the sense of running the government's...
Try to get the town set up back up.
Kind of bringing some kind of order out of chaos, and at the same time keeping the troops under control. That was one of the saddest things. And that's something else. That we had 2 fellows from Italy campaign joined our outfit. They'd gone all through the war, and they warned us. They said, "Don't get out there and get to drinking. That stuff out there it's bad stuff. Some of it's buzz bomb juice. They use it for the rockets, I guess, but it would kill them. They got a hold of that stuff, and it killed these 2 fellows. But it wasn't not nice, and so they would set up clubs, in the areas for the non-coms to have a little club, and the officers have theirs, and along with our regular duties. And then we went up into the Dachau area, first in Fellbrook,
Mm-hmm.
and spent a little time around there. I got a lot of pictures.
The Dachau was,
Yeah, in my book,
yeah.
I got some pictures of the Dachau area in a mag. I have some stars and stripes over my book there, but yeah, in there, first in Fellbrook was a town where the Air Force had their airport there, and they would come in. The fellows would go out to the airport, and they had the fellows around the Air Force fellows around the planes. They were just looking for something to get their hands on, and the fellows would get guns. They had all kinds of weapons, and they would trade whiskey for weapons and things like that. But that was one of their recreations. And there was one thing I forgot about in my case. We were back in Linz, Austria. I was standing guard right after the war hadn't quite ended yet, and they had part of the Navy was parked in the Danube River there.
Mm.
When you say Navy, these river barges and things, and they had Red Cross signs on there. But the fellows got to snoop around on there. They got on there, and they found that they were just loaded with ammunition and small arms.
Mm-mm.
And the guys were getting these little weapons, and they were bringing them in. I was on guard. I said to one staff sergeant, he's coming in with it. I said, "Let me look at that thing." You know, it was actually, it had like cosmoline still on the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just looking at it. I pulled the trigger, and lo and behold, he had put one shell in there. That took the wind out of my sails, I tell you.
Boy, I guess.
But that shot went down the hall in this apartment house and hit one of our corporals in the leg, and that sent me in a
That made you think again.
a tailspin, I tell you. And but that was worked out. Nothing developed from that. But a month or so later, that same fellow came back and said, "Thanks for that experience." They evacuated him back to England,
Oh.
and he got to spend a month or so in England.
Well, he got something nice out of it.
He felt like he
You
was
did him a favor.
He was a winner on that deal.
Mm-hmm.
Just very fortunate. It was a small caliber
Mm.
rifle, not a rifle, pistol.
But they found all these weapons on river barges?
Right, with they had the Red Cross signs on the boats too.
Mm.
And but then another thing we were treated to, there was a German ammunition train on the other side of the Danube River, and it caught on fire somehow, and it just blew up. Some Pierce sending these things up through the sky and reflecting on the water. It was quite a show. But
That's something you'd forget right away.
that was one of the fun times. Then while we were there, we got to went a 50-mile trip up a boat, barge, or whatever you call it. Just a cruiser
Mm-hmm.
on the boat, and the river itself wasn't very clean or anything like that at the time. But anyhow, we had that little excursion. But then we get back to
Well, I want us to get on. I
Right.
think we're getting
Getting
run out
carried
of
away.
time.
Right.
How long before you left Germany? In other words,
Okay.
or Austria, where you were?
Okay. Back in around the first of 46, we were put in a nice German Air Force camp down at Hallstatt in Bavaria, down in Schongau in that area, and spent the rest of our time there. And in May of during that time, I took over the supply sergeant,
Mm-hmm.
and then in about the 7th of May, we shipped home we catch on another troop train and go to Heidelberg and have full field packs, inspections, then get on another troop train
They like to do
and
that.
go on up to Bremerhaven,
Bremerhaven.
and we catch the one of those Liberty boats out of there, which was a slow boat to China,
Yeah.
so to speak. But
It was a little slower than
Right.
that beautiful
And-
ocean liner you came over on.
Right, and but the weather was basically good, and we could tolerate it. It did a lot of bobbing up and down, but I just think about
When did you land?
we got home on the Camp Kilmer at the what is it left there what did I say? Okay, we land there about on the excuse me. I did here. It's on my discharge papers.
Well, you got out in June, so
Yeah, I got on the
46.
okay, 12. Well, it's 21 days from the say like the 12th I got on. So okay. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. But
Oh, you got my
anyway, yeah, I've got
you got my
biography list. Okay, you landed back at Camp Kilmer,
right?
and
And
were you
we-
discharged from there
No,
or
no,
brought back to California?
we get on a troop train again
Mm.
and head for